Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this discussion on how the policy profession can empower itself through AI. Now, openness to using these new technologies is often the most significant step in driving progress. So it's great to see so many of you here today. And if you like what you see, please do shout about it to your colleagues. We really believe this is the future of government, but we do need your support. So, before we get into it, let me introduce myself, our speakers today, and first a little bit on the Incubator for Artificial Intelligence. The Incubator for Artificial Intelligence, or I.AI, is a crack team of technical experts within government, formed last year to harness the opportunities of AI to drive growth, improve lives, and deliver better public services. We're part of the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, previously part of the Cabinet Office in number 10, and our role is to prototype and crucially deploy AI solutions to build a modern digital government and deliver on the government's missions. So my name is Michael Padfield. I am a policy professional by background with experience in bill management, working on the Seafarers Wages Bill, in private office for the Master of the Rolls, and also in secretariat work in the Economic and Domestic Secretariat in the Cabinet Office. I now work as strategy manager in the Incubator for Artificial Intelligence, working with our ministers to move forward AI adoption in government. And I'm also incredibly lucky to be joined by two technical experts who really are the vanguard for AI in government and public services. But I'll let them introduce themselves. Liam.
Hi everybody, my name's Liam Wilkinson. I'm the head of applied AI at the Incubator for AI. I originally started out my career in national security within government, where I was working on artificial intelligence for a brief stint as a diplomat and then working at Microsoft as an AI engineer for national security. But very happy to say rejoining back into government as an innovation fellow in number 10 and now as head of applied AI at the Incubator. And I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Duncan.
Thanks, Liam. Hello, my name is Duncan Brown. I'm the head of software engineering at the Incubator for AI. I joined from DFE, where I was leading tech efforts around the recruitment and retention of teachers. And before that, I worked in startups in the edtech and publishing sectors. Back to you, Michael.
Amazing. Liam and Duncan really are the experts, and we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So get thinking of your questions. So what is the context of this talk today? Well, we are in a whole new world. Why is AI important in the policy profession? Well, gone are the days where institutional memory is stored in the minds of an individual, a Sir Humphrey Appleby figure, if you will. Instead, the policy professional of today has to process thousands of data sources to make scientific and strategic decisions about what makes good policy. And this is all with heightened accountability to the general public. And as the information at the fingertips of the policy professional keeps expanding, the tools at the disposal of the policy professional have to evolve too. And we as policy professionals have a duty to the public to make use of the best available technology to make the best decisions. And that is where the work of the Incubator for AI can come in. Now, I could talk to you about some of the challenges of using AI in government. We do think about this long and hard behind the scenes and would love to come to some of this in the Q&A at the end. But for the purposes of this presentation, we wanted to focus on opportunity and encourage you to think imaginatively about how AI can help you in your day-to-day. And no better way to do this than by showing you some AI tools in action. In fact, we're going to show you 4 tools: Redbox, Lex, Consult, and Parlex, each being developed by the Incubator to empower the policy professional through each part of the policy-making process, from ideation to law. And for each tool, I would encourage you to think, how would I do this task normally? And how can technology help me focus my time on decision-making for the citizen rather than on tedious administrative tasks? I personally have felt the pain of trawling through legislation, not knowing where to look, of wading through hundreds of consultation responses answers to find key themes and trudging through endless publications of strategy documents to build an understanding of a policy area. And I'm sure you feel this too. So on to the task for today. Myself, Duncan and Liam are going to roleplay a team of DESNZ officials. We have a new government that is mission-driven and technology-enabled. Ministers want us to develop a policy to deliver on its mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower. Now, using my policy brain and experience as a would-be official in Department for Energy Security, I know that delays in connecting clean energy projects to the national grid is a huge issue. But beyond that, I'm not too sure where to start. So why don't we have a look at what Redbox can do? Liam.
Thanks, Michael. So I'll say up top as a disclaimer, I am not a policy professional, but I am somebody who's passionate about helping it out. So what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how we can use Redbox to get through some large documents and ideate some policy. So many policy bits of policy ideation start with the manifesto. And I'm sure most of you have probably already read this in some form already, but that is a pretty beefy document, 136 pages. And realistically, this isn't the only document that you're working with on a regular basis. So what we want to do with Redbox is provide you a tool to take these relatively large documents and bring in artificial intelligence to help you extract some of the key points, almost kind of like an enhanced Control F, but equally ideate on some of those ideas that you're finding in documents with direct citation and all of it being done in a secure manner. So I think showing is better than telling. So let's dive into the Redbox. So I've already uploaded a few different documents. Some of them are official sensitive, some of them are official. And here I've already uploaded the manifesto. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this document, select it on the left-hand side, and I'm immediately going to ask, what are the key proposals around the national grid? Remember, our mission is to look at how we can make Britain a clean energy superpower. So this is reading the entirety of the manifesto, not just searching for individual bits, and it's taking an entire view of all of the different energy proposals in there. And we can see that the national grid upgrades is being mentioned. So now I'm going to pivot into an even more detailed document. So this is the Ofgem connections plan, which is 108 pages of really fine detail on what it takes to renew the grid. And so what I can do is immediately switch to that document and ask it to use some of the details inside of this Ofgem report to help me ideate some potential policy areas. So this really, we want to augment and superpower the policy professional to use as much information as is readily available from think tanks, from other government departments, and from academia, wherever possible. And so, fortunately, Redbox types a bit faster than I do, and in just a few seconds, it's rattled through that entire document and is coming back with some really specific proposals on how we might address the grid queue. And here we can see we're talking about first ready, first connected as a potential policy, but equally some of the changes which might need to happen to make this happen. But I've got to prepare this for my minister and also maybe for myself. So I'm going to get this in a bit more of a pithier list and perhaps add some emojis just for flavor. I don't know. I'm not a policy professional, so this is me definitely putting my own twist on it here. And so in just a few seconds, it's reading through the entire report and grounding itself in that detail before coming out with its refined list of proposals, which we can then take to work and workshop with the team, with the minister, so on and so on. And of course, we have feedback mechanisms throughout all of this, so that as you let us know where Redbox is doing badly, but also where it's doing well, we can reinforce those behaviors and make Redbox better over time. So Redbox, it's an AI service built for government by government. At the moment, Redbox is useful already as it is, and what we're hoping we can do is specialize it to help out the various different government professions around there, including policy, but also looking to potentially professions like policy, commercials, grants, you name it. So Redbox, an AI service built for government by government. And in a nutshell, what we're providing is secure AI usage at official sensitive. And you might have spotted it if you were eagle-eyed in the bottom left corner, but we actually provide access to all of the different large language model providers as an open market. And so what we want to do there is enable government to have the choice to use the best AI model for its audience. And finally, naturally, I think a lot of people are quite concerned that AI is being used responsibly in the government sector. That's why I'm very, very pleased to say that Redbox is entirely open source, so that any government department can go look at the code, and equally, any citizen who's interested in how AI is being used can go and have a look at how Redbox works behind the scenes, which is part of the Incubator's commitment to open source and transparency. So, wonderful. I've got my ideation document, but I'm going to run by the minister, and I've refined with my team. And what I'm going to do is ping that over on Teams and see what the minister thinks. Okay, looking promising. Could you work up an analysis of current legislation? No problem. So this is where I'm going to pivot to the next tool in the chain, Lex. So Lex is all about helping augment you in the research of existing law and regulations. And I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with a website which looks a little bit like this. So legislation.gov.uk, delivered by the National Archives, is one of the most authoritative sources of digitized legislation on the entire planet. And to be honest, without the National Archives' help, we wouldn't have been able to build what we're about to show you next. But to show you the current situation, if I was looking into researching Ofgem's role in the national grid queuing system, if I were to search Ofgem in the bit of legislation there, you can see I don't initially return any results. And that's maybe because it's in the title. But even if I go to the keywords of the content of the law and search Ofgem and potentially add some extra filters to go for all of the legislation available, we can see that I'm getting results, from decisions originating from EU and some secondary legislation, but it's not really showing me the most critical bits of law in priority order. And even when I'm applying an extra filter for major legislation, I'm not really getting as much as I need. The thing which we're hoping to introduce is what's called semantic search, where you can use plain English search queries in order to retrieve information relevant to you without having to know the exact letter of the law. Let's see it in action. So I'm immediately going to take a role of Ofgem as a search query into the system here, and you can see immediately that we're retrieving various different relevant bits of legislation, including the Gas Act, the Competition Act, and the Electricity Act of 1989. And on the right-hand side, we also get a guided tour of the results which are emerging, along with suggested follow-up queries generated by an AI system. This is working across all legislation back to 1287, including all legislation originating from the EU and regulations and secondary legislation. But here we can see on the right-hand side a plain English description of what the law is doing behind the scenes. But of course, you can access the full detail of each bit of those legislation, and you can go directly back to the authoritative source to see what's changed over time and the various different amendments which have been made to the legislation. So this is a tool which we've been testing out with a variety of users in DCIT build teams, and I'm very pleased to say that it's actually being used to help create the new AI bill in DCIT. Secondly, what we decided to do is that we could build something on top of this search engine. So there's a new concept which has been emerging called AI agents, where you can set an AI a high-level objective to maybe write you a research report, and then it can make the decisions about what searches it needs to do and self-critique its own research process in order to show you how it's going about its work. So let me take a very similar query. This is Lexplorer, a legislative explorer application. What I could say is what legislation governs national grid connection priority? And so what you're seeing here is a series of tools being used by the AI where it's writing a diary about its research process. And we have another AI in the mix called a critical friend who's actually reviewing the quality of the research process that it's doing. And here you can see it's giving feedback on, I like that you're looking at the Utilities Act, but maybe you need to have a look at some of the other directives and amendments behind the scenes. So this is our approach to help you see how the AI is working behind the scenes. And this is just one of our prototypes, which we built in about a week on top of the search engine. But what you can see at the end here is a well-considered set of researched directives from the EU and the Utilities Act of 2000, along with some extra detail around how Brexit is impacting some of these bits of legislation. So what we're trying to do here is to give you a colleague that you can turn to help you do some of that research, where you can set a task, you can review all of the different steps of its analysis where you need to, and then you can take the outputs and refine those with your team. But Lexplorer is something which we built quite quickly, and we're really looking forward to refining that with feedback from audiences like this. So Lex, in a nutshell, is a really powerful search engine over all legislation in the UK. Equally, it provides plain English explanations for those who don't necessarily have a law degree, extremely important for myself. And then finally, its assisted drafting and research is one of our key development areas, where we're providing features to allow people to set a task and let an AI have a good first draft at the process. So let's say in a very simplified world, I take my research report and the minister wants to see it immediately. So what I'm going to do is going to take some of the research around the existing legislation. The general view we're coming to is that maybe there isn't too much existing legislation here, which might make legislation easier, or that we maybe have to do less amendments. But what we can do is push out to the minister and give them the breakdown of a current legislative context. Great, let's work up a bill and run a consultation on the main proposals. So this is where I'm going to turn to my colleague Duncan. Duncan, take it away.
Thanks, Liam. We've got this new legislation. Let's say we've drafted something, but it turns out that it's going to be potentially quite contentious. For example, maybe the minister's heard from a parliamentary colleague that citizens in that person's constituency will be disproportionately affected. And perhaps there are a few questions that need to be addressed from small businesses in the energy supply chain. So the team decides to consult on the consultation. So as far as we know, the consultation isn't a process that inspires a huge amount of confidence. As you can see from this survey, which actually the policy profession carried out in 2020, it's generally considered quite a low value activity that sometimes doesn't have that much impact on the outcome. And in talking to teams across a lot of different departments, we found that there are most certainly consultations that are designed kind of more as box ticking exercises than as well-intentioned consultative process. And what's more, they're also really arduous to conduct. So the bigger and more controversial and sort of almost more important your consultation, the more responses it's going to attract. And then you've got to read all those responses and summarize them so that all the information can be made digestible. And yet, this is kind of the best thing we've got for finding out what we don't know. So that's why we're developing Consult. So with Consult, we're looking specifically at the reading and interpreting phase of consultations, which are, like, at the moment, the most time-consuming and expensive part of the process. There's good work to do upstream on the kind of left of this slide, and we hope that if we can standardize the tools a bit, then we can maybe create some opportunities to improve in that direction too. Responsibility for all these steps right now is shared between policy teams and the agencies to whom they invariably end up outsourcing some or all of this work. Which means more handoffs and kind of throwing things over the wall and sort of less feedback as we refine and develop the different parts of the consultation interpretation. So if you're coming to this presentation concerned about AI, and actually some of the comments in the chat are showing this, note that the agencies to whom departments are already outsourcing are already applying a mixture of manual and automated analysis to this. So we see part of our role here is kind of shining a bit of light on that and helping us all to understand what the limitations are. So with Consult, our aim is to provide you with a service which is better, cheaper, and faster than the kind of existing process, and something that works inside and alongside your team. So the problem here is that we've got a lot to read. And once we've read everything, we need to kind of report on it. So Consult performs 3 tasks, and you can see the first one here. So first of all, it helps you figure out what themes you care about in your consultation. So typically, this is a process which involves taking like a sample of responses and then manually pulling out these people care about this, these people care about that, and building a framework of themes. Then you hand the framework and all of the responses to a team, or maybe you're doing this in the same team, and their job is to classify every response into one or more themes on the framework. So this process in Consult is a collaborative process between human and AI. You can start with a set of themes of your own, or you can ask the AI to come up with a set, and then you work with the AI to iterate those themes until you're happy that they cover all the necessary topics. And the thing that makes this really useful is that the cycle time on coming up with a new theme framework is suddenly much, much shorter. So it means that you can basically prototype your theme framework, you can get really fast feedback on it, and then you can be much more evidence-based and sort of directed than you were before. It's kind of the difference between sending a letter by ship to America versus writing an email. The second task is that it performs this task of assigning themes to responses. So if each theme, so here's a response that someone's written concerned about these issues, and the Consult process will assign those themes from the framework to the response. It'll pull out quotes so you can figure out exactly which bits are relevant, because obviously one response is not equivalent necessarily to one quote. And then finally, it will generate a report for you where you can slice and dice sentiment according to whatever demographic dimensions you put into your consultation in the first place. So that could be location, age, industry, etc. So this effectively presents you with the information, in a tabular or sort of like visualized format. So again, I just want to stress that point that this is fast and it is relatively cheap. No longer does this need to be a linear process where you wait until the consultation is concluded before you set about analysis. And as a byproduct of this, and this is really important, that's something I think we'll talk about with all these products in due course, is that we come up with key metrics for the quality of the analysis. And this is something which is going to vary across different consultations and different teams, but it's one of the really key things that's going to enable teams to take up this text. So using Consult, our team has iterated their analysis and polished their report. A few tweaks to the proposed policy later, and we'll send it up to the minister. Off we go. Great. Looks like it's time to legislate. Back to Liam, who's got one more tool to help us with that final hurdle of getting the bill through Parliament.
Awesome. Thanks, Duncan. So now that we have our refined policy, and for these purposes, we will be using a very simplified version, we go to parliamentary handling. So I'm sure many of you have interacted or worked inside of bill teams who have to maintain these gigantic documents around, different positions in Parliament, some of the key and influential people, and equally who the team should be engaging with in order to get the legislation, refined before it's even introduced. So what we're doing here is we are giving you a tool to do a bit of a vibe check on Parliament. So Parlex allows you to take current bills which have been introduced to Parliament and analyze those, but equally you can take your own draft bill and pop it in. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to take the same kind of proposals that we were looking at from Redbox earlier on. I'm going to paste that in, and then immediately I can run an analysis on all of the different contributions to the House of Commons and the Lords to see what people are saying on these kinds of subjects. In a matter of moments, you can see streaming in about 71 different contributions from the House. And here we can see on the left the more negative sentiment for these proposals, and on the right, the more positive. So immediately I can filter out by the Lords, and I can look at the top MP here, Theresa May, and we can see some of her direct verbatim contributions. We want to make sure you have direct access to the data. But equally, we also want to give you the tools to be able to get through this stuff quickly. So we provide summaries of the key concerns, tone, stance, and so on. So now that we've looked at Theresa May's one, we might want to focus on the more negative feedback towards the bill. And so here I filtered it down to sentiments below 4 out of 10. And here we can see Sir Bernard Jenkin has some criticisms, advocates for more offshore grid. And then Priti Patel is looking more at the rigidity of the planning processes there. You can see the number of contributions, but equally what we can do is take all of this subpopulation who maybe disagree with the sentiment, and we can generate a summary of that group. So what this allows you to do is to help you profile and slice Parliament by the various different factions, the various different political groups, but equally just by pure opinion, and export all of those Hansard contributions directly. So the AI tool is helping you find what you need here, but we really want to provide you the tools to export all of that so you can do the rigorous analysis as well. So with all of that exported, what we can then do is we can take this up to the minister with a high-level kind of summary of some of the parliamentary views, and we can see some of the main arguments why people are supporting, some of the common messages, and some of the differences in the contributions that we're seeing. And we can, of course, provide the direct export of all of those Hansard debates. Wonderful. Looks like we're ready to go. But just to say, we're building this in direct collaboration with Parliament, who have been giving us access to data behind the scenes, and we're really excited to see where we could take that collaboration further. But with that, I'm going to hand back over to Michael.
Fantastic. Thank you, Liam, and thank you, Duncan, for those really exciting demos, and great to see all of the questions in the chat, which we can come to at the end. So we have a new act, and we have a very happy minister. Congratulations. The AI-empowered policy professional has satisfied the challenge and met the ambition that the minister has set in terms of making the clean energy superpower. And I just want to recall what I said at the very beginning of this presentation. How would you have done this work normally? Well, I can think about how I would have done this work normally from experience. I've struggled in policy scoping in the past, sometimes not knowing where to start, not having the time to read endless strategy documents and knowing which page to look, and struggling to distill some of my thoughts. I've also laboured in legislative research, having to rely on precious departmental lawyer resource and also wading through the statute book to find relevant information to the policy that I'm working on, and sometimes just getting stuck. I've been drowned in consultation responses in the past, having to manually input information into spreadsheets, making quite rough summarizations of responses, and not being able to do so quickly to drive the progress that is needed for the citizen. And I've also demonstrated in the past an ad hoc approach to parliamentary handling. So not doing this in any sort of scientific way, engaging with people on recommendation, sometimes misjudging the mood of Parliament and possibly jeopardising parliamentary passage as a result. And just think back again to Sir Humphrey Appleby, who we mentioned at the beginning, who comedically used some of these struggles as excuses to block progress and probably did his parliamentary handling down the Red Lion over a Friday lunchtime. But instead, the AI-empowered policy professional has used Redbox to scope out policy options, crucially not to make policy decisions, but just to scope out what options are out there on existing documents. The AI-empowered policy professional has also used Lex to see what the legislative context is in the area and to gain those insights quickly. Again, not taking away the policy professional's expertise and ability to make decisions, but making that information much more digestible and available. The AI-empowered policy professional then used Project Consult to draw out the key themes from a consultation to do so quickly. And then the Hansard tool Parlex to target parliamentary handling. And through that process has brought a bill to royal assent. Again, retaining the strategic decision-making of the policy professional, but presenting the information to them in a way that's much more manageable and leads to better outcomes. Now, this was just a snapshot of the vast number of tools that are under development by the Incubator for AI. As well as delivering tools for a modern digital government, we in the Incubator are also building AI to unlock mission delivery and meet manifesto commitments.